Well, hey everyone, it's great to be with you today. Merry Christmas. I hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you're having a great summer. It's nice and hot down there, I hear. Over here in the US, it's kind of chilly, so hope you're enjoying the warm beach weather. Today I want to share an incredible story with you. It comes to us from the book of John. It's about the woman who was caught in adultery. And I'll set the scene for you. It's Jesus in the temple, and he's teaching. And in the middle of his teaching, amongst the crowd, the Pharisees grab this woman who's been caught in the act of adultery, and they drag her before him, and they throw him down at her feet. And they say to him, Jesus, this woman's been caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says she should be stoned to death. What do you say? And this is a huge trap. Because if Jesus says, no, she shouldn't be stoned to death, then he's disagreeing with the law of Moses, which would out him as an imposter before God's people. But if he says, yes, she should be put to death, and agrees with the law of Moses in this case, then he would be violating Roman law, which means that he would be in trouble with the Romans, because the Roman law was that only Roman officials could sentence people to death. Jewish people couldn't. And so Jesus sees their game, and he knows what they're trying to do. And his heart is so full of mercy and compassion, because he's taken this woman who's in a very broken state and is being caught in a very difficult, horrible situation, and is using her as cannon fodder. Not because they care about justice, not because they care about the law being implemented, just because of one reason only: they want to trap Jesus. And why do they want to trap Jesus? They want to trap Jesus because he is getting more followers, and he is gaining fame and popularity, and he's gaining power in the lives of people, and they hated losing power. And so they were so determined that they would not lose their power and their influence over the people, and they could see Jesus was gaining it. And so they made this decision that what they were going to do was use this poor woman's plight and try to, not caring about her at all, not even caring about the situation, they just found an opportunity to try to trap Jesus, to either get them in trouble with the people by violating God's law, or with the Romans. Well, Jesus is just way beyond this, and he refuses to be dragged into their mission, and he stays on his mission. And I think that's my big idea for this talk and the time we've got together, is I would want to encourage you as we come up and face the new year, that we have to remember and we have to grab a hold of staying in line with what Jesus' mission is. And Jesus' mission is simply this: to seek and save those who are lost. In other words, Jesus came to rescue people. And that's what his mission is, and that's what we need to stay in line with and in tune with. It's so easy to get dragged into all these other things that we should be concerned about and worried about and passionate about. And there's plenty of things that we can be interested in, but the mission of Jesus is the mission that we need to grab a hold of and follow with all of our strength and all of our might. And not just that, but actually let it do its work in our heart and in our lives. I think that's probably the biggest key for me, is that we need to make sure that we are allowing what his mission for coming to this earth and living and dying and rising again, that we need to make sure that that mission is alive and well in our heart. And so Jesus refuses to get dragged into their mission. He stays on his mission, and he says this thing to them. He says, okay, well, let's do it this way, guys. He looks at them all and he says, he who was without sin, you cast the first stone at her. And immediately they all know, well, we're all sinners, because in Jewish culture and in Jewish belief, everyone's sinned. Everyone's done the wrong thing before God, and that's why we need a redeemer. And so even those men knew that if we say that we're not sinful, then the people will know that we're lying. And so they had nowhere to go because they couldn't act on it. And so Jesus just totally dilutes their plan, but does something way more powerful. He doesn't just get rid of their plan and dilute it. He actually comes in with a flood of grace. And this to me is what's so fascinating and so wonderful about him. He takes this woman who was just a pawn in their game, who was being used in the most horrendous situation she found herself in. Who knows what the circumstances were that got her there? Obviously, she'd made some mistakes and had done the wrong thing and got herself into a scenario where she was committing adultery. But you know what? At the end of the day, whatever got her there, it was pretty rough, however she ended there. It wasn't her best day, let's put it that way. And she finds herself in public being scorned and humiliated, and really potentially even fearing for her own life. And just to prove a point, what a mockery of this woman that this whole situation was. And Jesus doesn't just get rid of their argument. He actually uses the whole scenario to rescue her. And let's check out what he does. He says to, where are those that are here to accuse you? And she says, they're not here. And he goes, well, then I don't accuse you either. And then he says the most amazing words to her that I think really sum up the mission of Christ in our lives and on this earth. He doesn't just set her free from her circumstance. He doesn't just unlock the door and release her from her prison of judgment and condemnation. He actually guides her out and gives her a pathway to right living, and the kind of living that will bring life and liberty and joy and freedom and abundance to her life. He doesn't just say, well, you know what, they're not here to condemn you, me either, count yourself lucky. He actually says to her, go your way, condemnation free, but hey, don't sin anymore. And sometimes in following God, we can feel like, church can be filled with rules. The Bible's full of rules, and you can't do this, you can't do that, you shall not, you shall not, you shall not. And it can feel a little bit like, well, following God is all about what you can't do. And I would say on that thought is God lays down really clear guidelines for us to live our life. Not so that he can make it tight and hard for us because he's like this mean God that wants us to be obeying him, the letter of the law, but rather he wants us to live a life that's filled with joy and peace and happiness. And he knows that if we live a life this way, then we're going to enjoy our life, and our life will be filled with joy. But if we live our life outside the boundaries that he's laid down for us, it'll bring heartbreak, it'll bring brokenness, it'll bring destruction. And adultery is one of those things that he knows is going to destroy lives. And so he basically says to her, look, no one's condemning you. Go, be free, but don't do it anymore, because guess what? I don't just want to unlock the gate. I actually want to lead you into a place where you can now start to live your life that will help you take the next steps to health and freedom and fullness. And so as we consider our walk with God, and as we consider this new year coming up, I want to encourage you to search your heart and think about, God, where are you calling me? What are you calling me to do? What have you got for me in this new year? And what are the things that you're putting on my life? And I would say, remember these things, that God's plan for you this year is a plan based in mercy. It's a plan based in rescue. It's a plan based in no condemnation. It's a plan based in go and make great decisions. It's a plan based in go and sin no more. Go and make changes to your life that are going to be life-giving. And understand this, guys. There's going to be many times this in the new year, and probably before the new year, where we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do the wrong thing. We're going to screw it up, and we're going to fall short of how good we need to be. But here's the most amazing thing. God doesn't look at us with judgment, with wrath, with anger and hatred. God looks at us with eyes of mercy. The book of Lamentations describes it this way, that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, that his mercy never comes to an end. It is new every morning. Great is his faithfulness to us. Every morning, God's mercy is brand new for you. And if you're the sort of person that feels that you have a hard time getting it all together, that you have a hard time getting it right, that you have a hard time being good enough to please God, well, join the club. We're all like that. We all have a hard time being good enough for God. In fact, none of us can do that. And that's why God sent Jesus. And I love this thought, and I want to kind of wrap by just planting this seed in your mind one more time. That Jesus had a chance to debate them on the law of Moses. He had a chance to debate them on the Roman law. He had a chance to call out the fact that all they were there for was to trap him. But really what he did was he ignored all of those things. He had one mission in that moment, and that was hurt. And I would say this, if you want to know what Jesus' mission was on this earth, and if you want to know what his Spirit's mission is now, it's you. That's how cool that is. It's you. You are his mission. All the things that Jesus could have achieved in that conversation, in that argument, in that debate, in that encounter with those Pharisees. He had a crowd in front of him. He had the Pharisees lined up. He could have gotten into the law of Moses and their interpretation of it. He could have gotten into Roman law. He could have gotten into the whole thing and had it out with them. But instead of that, he chose to ignore all those opportunities and stay on mission. And the mission in that moment was her. And it was to protect her. It was to rescue her. It was to unlock the gate of condemnation. And it was to lead her into a place of freedom. And not just to be free, but to know now here are the next steps for you to take so that you can live a life filled with God's kindness, with God's mercy, and with God's compassion. So maybe there's areas in your life today where you feel condemned and you feel trapped and you feel like you're stuck and you feel like God must be very mad with you and despise you and all sorts of other things. And maybe there's voices accusing you, and the Bible talks about that our enemy is an accuser. He likes to accuse us. And here's the thing, Jesus never said to those Pharisees, hey, you're actually wrong, she didn't commit adultery. He agreed with them. He understood that she had done that. And so I want to say to you, the same goes for the enemy. When the enemy comes to accuse you, just because he may be right, that the things that he's making you feel guilty about and the things that he's making you feel less than about, they may be true. They may be accurate. You may have done those things and you may be stuck and challenged in those things. But here's where he's wrong. He's wrong in the fact that just because he says it and just because you've done it does not mean there's guilt, and it does not mean there's condemnation. Because Jesus said that the Son of Man has not come in, speaking about himself, he said, I have not come into this world to condemn the world, but I've come to save the world through my life and my death and my resurrection. And that's the promise for us today, that yep, we are guilty and yep, we have made mistakes. But what the difference is that the accusation that comes and the guilt and the shame that comes, that we don't have to stand before God paying the price for that anymore, but that Jesus has paid that price for us. And my encouragement for you today is that you would trust him to take the burden, take the weight, and take the guilt of all the things that you struggle with and wrestle with and that weigh you down, and that you would hand those over to him today, and that you would find a sense of peace knowing that Jesus is passionate about his mission, and guess what? You're his mission, and he wants to pour out mercy on you. I love you guys. I can't wait to be with you soon. I pray that you have a fantastic new year, and we're going to have a wonderful new year in 2025. God bless.